Hello, everybody, and welcome. This is Lessons for Full Spectrum Humans. Today is July 11th. This is lesson 4 of the 2018 second semester. So in the first hour is level 1, second hour is level 2. Of this first hour of level 1, part of it I'm going to conform very well to the lessons that are part of the teachable cycle. And one of the things I wanted to make very clear and to make a little distinction, let me just adjust my computer a little bit. There we go. Is that I recorded those lessons about 5 years ago, and I titled that lesson Organic and Inorganic Life. And I have a whole, there's more that comes after that. And what I was trying to get across was the idea that we have a physical presence that we can all experience and touch with our 5 senses. And then we have a non-physical presence that is that area that surrounds us and all of those paintings and drawings. And I can get to the paintings and drawings. But the idea that we have a non-physical presence that is considered to be made purely out of time, out of energy, out of pure consciousness, out of the intangible aspects of self. And so I used for those words the organic body, like organic cellular body, and inorganic. And that was like 5 years ago. And so subsequently I've read and watched a lot of things. And now some people use the word inorganic to mean like a computer-based intelligence or a machine-based intelligence. And I just want to make a really clear distinction that that's not what I meant when what I was talking about when I recorded that in lesson 4. So I actually have like a little blurb, a little paragraph that I wrote last year in order to clarify that. And I just wanted to make certain that it would not be taken out of context. So what this lesson is about is that we have physical presence and we have a non-physical presence, and that I think in a lot of recent spiritual teachings, people have made a distinction between the lower self and the higher self, but that I do not really consider that to be a valid distinction, because what we've been experiencing up until this point is an artificial bifurcation of the self, that if this is the level of love, the tone of love, and if this is where it is roughly centered in terms of anatomy, that it emanates from our heart, then for a large part of human history, humans have been defined only as the level of the spectrum that is below the heart. That's like only being defined by notes that are down here, the lower notes of self. And the lower notes of self absolutely exist. However, we also have these higher faculties. And so I'll get into exactly what am I talking about when I say the higher faculties. And they've been clearly not just unrecognized, not like, oh, look, I thought I had some higher faculties around here, but I forgot about them. Not just something that you errantly misplaced, but literally hidden from humanity intentionally, that it was kept from humanity because when we activate these higher aspects of self, I'm just drinking, we literally become super beings. Super, meaning like a higher position, super positioned. We become super being. We become our super aspect of self. So, if you think of Superman or Superwoman, it's like we're not necessarily literally flying through the sky, even though that would be very cool. What we are doing is flying through time. And up until this point, as like the definition of what a human is up until this point, because I'm even surprised, like, when my shoulders go down when I first came here, and like part of the things that I read about, and they say like to err is human. They say the definition of what it is to be human around here is to be flawed in some way. And I'm like, no, guys, like you're full spectrum humans and you just don't have it all activated yet. So that's another thing I wanted to say in the recorded lessons. I'm also talking about higher faculties and how we, in our present stage of development, are really like little infants. And I'm not intending to sound condescending at all, because believe me, I've been a professional live-in nanny and professional babysitter. That was extensive. That was when I was in Woodstock many, many years ago. More than 10 years ago at this point. So some of the little kids and babies that I sat for now are like teenagers and going to college, which is just quite amazing to think of that. But yes, and I lasagnified them all. I really felt like that was why my job was to work with these particular kids. And by lasagnify, I mean like express new ideas to them and new possibilities of, but things that they might not have thought about. So they were all wonderful, special kids. I'm getting drawn a little off track. Let me refocus. Make sure that I'm talking about everything that really matters. We are supposed to have our higher faculties online. We're supposed to be able to perceive the road of time in front of us, basically know what is going to happen in the future. I'm just checking to make sure everybody is muted, not because I don't love you, but just because people have told me background noise is distracting. Oh, and let me also make sure that the chat is visible so that I know if there's any questions. Yeah, we're supposed to be able to see the future. And in this time and place, that is considered to be a superpower. Like, hey, is that normal? No, that is not normal. That is only for special people, people that are so special that you can pay them money to see your future. Like, I'm going to look into, I actually have a crystal ball right there. You go, I'm pointing to it right there. I'm going to look into my crystal ball and tell you what your future is. But each one of us should be able to determine that, because that is an aspect of flying through time. So humanity has been intentionally subjugated by the genetic squashing, by the removal or dormancy of those particular aspects of human anatomy. So hold on one moment. I'm going to do screen share. I need to find an image. Usually I'm very organized. So just let me find a picture, a very particular one. That should be, let's see. I know I'm squinting and scrolling. I make funny faces. I know it's here. Thank you. Actually got 2 pictures and this one too. Oh, good. All right. Good. Okay, now I'm ready for screen share. Technology is working. It's wonderful. Okay, so I have a couple of different images here. This is a pencil sketch. And let me also get the little annotation so I can show you what's going on here. So this is kind of a top-down view. If you can see, like, here's an eyeball, and here's an eyeball, and then here's a mouth down here, that this is more of a semi-artistic interpretation of what those 4 vortices look like as they intersect in the center of your head, where I'm making that black dot right there. So, you know, mostly, so what are the higher faculties? The higher faculties, I just started with this image, but I have several other images. It's a bunch of your different, wait, what do I have to do in order to move something around? Sorry, oh, select, I'm sorry. Nah, keep it simple. I'll just work with this image first and then go on to the next image. Because we've also got, there's the crown chakra that would be up here where I just made that circle. And then there are other, I'll show you in the other picture. But what we've got here is the indigo chakra, and it is usually associated with the dot that is on the forehead. See where I'm making this black dot over here, kind of like slightly above and directly in between the eyes. So this is the 3rd eye, or the inner eye, and it is an emanation of the pineal gland. And the pineal gland physically is situated, see where I'm making this kind of like tadpole shape over here, in your glandular system of your brain, in the center, kind of like where the hemispheres are divided, and kind of right in between the cleft of where they are divided, you have this pineal gland. And it is like an eyeball that does not have a cornea or an iris, but it still does have cells of perception that are like retina cells. And it also has crystals that are inside of it. Some of them are monoatomic, or, you know, very, very tiny microcrystals that pick up transmissions and also emit transmissions, just like an old-fashioned radio. So the gland itself is not the chakra or the energy system. And when a person dies, the chakra, or the whirling and twirling, you know, cones of energy, those go away. But your pineal gland remains and can be seen upon dissection of your dead corpse. So the chakra or energy center emanates from and is intertwined with the, you know, a living, healthy functioning of the pineal gland, which is the seat of your imagination. But it's not equivalent to, it's not exactly the same as. And I've also said, and I'm just going to rewind a little bit here, I've also said that this aspect of non-physical anatomy is like a lens. Here, like that's the worst. Let me just get control of my pencil here. Like, this is a big lens in front of your face. Like if you were wearing eyeglasses, this lens is in front of your face. And the lens is the filter of perception, or the system of interpretation through which one interprets reality. And I was saying in the Facebook introduction here, I'm just drinking a little bit of water. Hold on a sec. At this area, I'm showing you a perfected divine, you know, I'm showing you this is like the healthy version, right? The perfected divine version of this. But that what's going on in humanity right now is a lot of distortion, because this lens, you know, is a filter of perception, and it is acculturated. Like it gets passed down through culture. So older generations teach it to future generations, and it's been distorted in like the sense of who and what is Christ, because this is Christ consciousness. What I am drawing here, this level of awareness, is Christ consciousness. And no offense to anyone that has a Christian faith. However, you know, from my experiences, from my perceptions, the doctrine of the Christian church and the established church itself is antithetical to what the actual consciousness is like when one activates this energy center. So the basics, again, are that these energy centers have been artificially squashed or limited in their function due to the genetic degradation of humanity. And that when these energy centers are running properly, it's like being a super being. But it's not just the eyebrow chakra. It's not just the one that is, you know, kind of up above your eyes. It's also in conjunction with that activating this, one that is perpendicular to it, that is the crown chakra. That it has to be balanced. It has to be a perfect partnership and an interrelationship of these two energy centers, just like the rotor at the back end of a helicopter and the blades that spin around the top of the helicopter. That these two, you know, gyro stabilizing effect, the 90-degree angles of, and here's the helicopter itself. I always make it shaped like a sperm or something like that. That's a helicopter right there that I just drew, guys. The interaction, the interplay between crown chakra, which is violet in color, and it's also the highest note of the human octave, and the indigo chakra, the interplay between the two of them. And I used to call it a marriage or partnership, but then I realized like most marriage and partnership on earth right now is by definition heavily distorted and exploitive. So then I had to stop using those words, because this is, I'm telling you, like every time I use a word, I'm like, okay, but then I learn what it's actually referring to in cultural context, and then I'm like, okay, that's not what I really mean. This lens that has been passed down for the past 2,000 years in humanity has like astigmatism, has like warbles in it, you know, like areas that are not clear or that are smears, you know, there's fuzziness on the lens, there's things that are distorted. And the things that are distorted have to do with this whole story or mythos of what I call the Roman Jesus, the story of the biblical person who is a man named Jesus who experienced, you know, crucifixion, and that is somehow related to this aspect of your anatomy. And I'm trying to be like, no, like this is about Christ consciousness, which is an abstract galactic scale consciousness that each one of us becomes a part of. When we activate this area of our individual anatomy, we become like a cell on a much larger eye. So if I'm drawing a retina right now, this is the area that is like the photosensitive area on the back of your eyeball. And there's always a little blind spot down there called, there's always a blind spot. Let's make the blind spot the X. And then there's always this little spot down here that's the focal point, that's the fovea. And then there, you know, there's all of these receptor cells, all these little dots, like making little tiny dots. I don't know if you can see it on your screen, but every single one of these little dots is a receptor cell. And the way that vision works is the total amount of information from this entire retina gets passed, you know, to the mind, and the mind, perceives it as light. And so each one of those little retinas cells, each one of those little receptors is essential. If you don't have receptors, you can't see, you go blind. And so each one of us is supposed to be a receptor. We're supposed to be like one cell that is able to see through time, and we're part of this much larger time being. And now it's this whole thing has been subverted because I'm trying to go to a different picture. I'll stop share and then I'll be able to go to a different picture. This whole thing has been subverted due to the fun old genetic squashing. That's not actually very fun. So wait, now let me go to this picture. This is what I was trying to show you. Did it work? I don't think it worked. Okay, let me stop sharing. Sometimes technology is not being very compliant right now. I'm like, what's going on? I want to do stop share. Okay, let's try it in a different way. Thank you for bearing with me. Let's do this one now. Sometimes I can't see the cursor. It's very hard to do. And wave my magic wand and poof. Poof, it worked. Okay, this was the one that I was trying to show you guys. And let me get the little annotation so I can tell you what I'm talking about here. So this little drawing is much more accurate because you can see all of the aspects of anatomy that add up to what I call the higher faculties. This whole entire thing, I should use a different color, this whole entire thing is or are your higher faculties. So on the one hand, we've got where I'm pointing this red arrow, that's your heart. And your heart actually emits an electromagnetic field with its pulsing. That is enormous. Here I'm highlighting it in red, even though we associate this heart color in green. And you can see it makes this kind of cleft, like a perfect little well within which the next set of chakras or whirling energy centers can nest. And you can see there's this one, it's almost like tires. Fly in here, driving me crazy. They're like tires on a vehicle. And here's like the axle going through the tire, wheel and axle. And that is, that's your indigo chakra, even though I'm using red. And just like the picture I was showing you one moment ago, you can see you've got a big fat lens in front of your face. And that's not all that's going on. So one of the big takeaways here is, look at how this wheel fits perfectly in that little cleft that is created by the heart. The healthy functioning of this energy center here, the whirling and swirling and emitting and pulsating aspect of your heart, when it makes its love tone as you're moving through time at just the right rate, which is 1 moment per moment, as we're jumping from moment box to moment box. Remember, I drew those boxes last week. Remember, we're jumping from moment to moment through time and making the right noise while we jump along. Here, I stop jumping. Jump, 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 jump. Well, that's love. That is love. Love is a tone that you make when you jump through time at 1 moment per moment. And so what we're going to do is talk about meditation. That's actually lesson 5. It's for next week. But creating that love tone is what creates this foundation that I'm circling in red that is essential for the other faculties to balance upon or to perch upon. So unconditional love is the gas that makes your car go. It's the gas that makes these higher faculties actually function. Because again, this goes down to, don't just take my word for it. I see through time and I see this stuff and I paint it like this and I just make these sculptures and these animations. I'm drinking more water, hold on. And I'll also talk about what is the experience like of perception. And I'll go back to my face, but hold on a minute. I don't want to end this image. I want to keep showing it to you. Don't take my word for it. What am I seeing? I'm seeing through my higher dimensional telescope. Each one of you also has a higher dimensional telescope that you should be able to use to perceive whatever you wish to perceive. So don't just take my word for it. So here's the big caveat in the human experience. Let's say energy is circulating up from our lower aspects of self, from the physical through the emotional, through the intellectual, and then through the heart, and then up through these higher faculties. At a certain point, it's gotten to this level here where I'm making a big scribble mark that is directly up above the eyes, it's at the forehead. And this, in so many different traditions of self-cultivation, is like a moment of attainment. And in the inner experience, remember I'm telling you that I'm showing you perfect anatomy, but that in humanity and in culture right now, it's distorted. A lot of people reach this level of attainment up here, and not only do they think that they have reached the pinnacle, like you have not reached the pinnacle of the mountain. Like if this is the mountain and you are trying to go to the top of the mountain where I put the arrow, you are not quite there yet. You're down here, still a little bit below the summit, but people think that they've hit the summit. And it's very distorting when you are looking through this level of perception here, but you haven't yet activated this, the crown chakra. That's like the librarian of the cosmos. So getting this activated here, this moment of attainment, when you open up your inner eye, it's like getting a library card. Call it getting your library card of the cosmos. The cosmos is defined as every single possible timeline. Means just like when you were a little kid, I don't know if this happened when you were a little kid, but mostly like, you're a little preschooler or kindergartner and you get a library card and then you can go to the library and you are allowed to check out any book you want. But that's incredibly daunting. It is incredibly overwhelming. There's more than 10,000 books in a library and some words you don't even know. You're just a little kindergartner. There's nothing wrong with being a kindergartner. So it can be very confusing. And this is what it's like when one first, I'll make a little card. You get your interdimensional library card and you go to the giant, storage library of consciousness. And it's like, where do you even begin? And it can even be dangerous Like if you're a little tiny kindergartner and you don't really have context of information, you can be misled very easily. If it's like, well, first we're going to give you this book, then we're going to give you this book, and you could develop a distorted view of reality. Like if your first book is Mein Kampf or, you know, something like that. I'm just thinking of whatever. I'm trying to think of the most inappropriate material to give to a little kindergartner, that would be very distorting. Also, you need to read a book in the right order, pages in the right order. So this, I should change colors. This higher dimensional purple, violet one, bug is driving me crazy. That's why I'm waving my arm around. Violet chakra is the librarian. And the librarian is our guidance system that tells us what we are supposed to look at, what we are supposed to check out with our inner vision. It's like if the coordinates that you program your telescope to, the sky is a really, really freaking big place out there. There's billions and billions of stars. How do you know what star you want to look at with your higher dimensional telescope? How do you know where to go, which coordinates? What do you look at? And so the answer is you get your own higher dimensional guidance system to tell you where to look. This is not the same as saying you consult an external oracle or an external deity. This is not something other. This is not something outside of you. It's still in the range of human. It's in the definition of what we call human. It's your highest aspect of self. So back to that whole idea of in, the spiritual community or the new age, quote unquote, community, that there was this artificial bifurcation that was, I'm drawing this line right down here, kind of at the level of the heart, with the idea of, oh, you've got your lower self, your ego self. And of course we must be critical and hateful of our ego. And then you've got your higher self, and your higher self is perfect and divine and is never, unhappy or angry or perturbed or anything like that. So you can tell by my voice, I'm kind of making a little bit of fun of that because that's all obsolete. That is an obsolete bifurcation. The whole thing is you. This whole thing is you. You are the whole thing. I don't know if you can see this other image that I have. I should show it to you too. But just your full spectrum, all the way from here, ball on the piano, red, orange, yellow, green, blue, indigo, violet, and then even up to white light. You're the whole thing. You're the whole spectrum. You are not just a little aspect of the spectrum, and then there's some other higher thing that is telling you, oh, go here, do this, look this, like you're the little marionette, and then there's someone else telling you what to do. No, that's what I want to make really, really clear. So I don't know if that is clear enough in the recording that I did 5 years ago, but the entirety of this whole apparatus is you. There is no external authority figure or external deity, or like I said, puppet master directing and controlling you. Let me just drink more water. And this also means, I call it like a partnership between, your library card and the librarian. It's not supposed to be like a super power struggle where you got one aspect of self. Let me make the right color there. So we've got, this violet chakra up here, and then we've got the blue chakra. That's usually a very deep indigo color that's down here. It's supposed to be a partnership where they work together. It's not supposed to be like, oh, the violent overlord is telling you what to do, like you must read this, otherwise you're not allowed to be alive. Like, no, it's not like that at all. It's supposed to be like, hey, I'm a loving, wise aspect of yourself, and I want you to get an accurate picture of the world, so look at this first. And it's also, which road of time are you driving down? Are you driving down this road of time? Are you driving down this road of time? Are you driving down this road of time? Well, now you are all experts at this class, and I draw the time vortex all the time. And I say, hey, there's all of these many, many multiple possibilities and probabilities, and we're just trying to get on that central core timeline. How do we see? How do we know? How do we know if we're on the central core timeline? Is this the central core timeline? I don't know. Let's try it. We don't have to just do trial and error and bump into the membrane of death and try again. As Pedro said last week, the GOTA lives, game over, try again. We don't have to do it like that anymore if we have our higher faculties activated, because our violet chakra up here can literally tell us, hey, you want to be on this timeline that I'm swirling down right here, because that's this central timeline. That is how we were created. We were created as musicians who can actually read I want to emphasize by saying freaking musical score of the cosmos. We were meant to be able to see where we're going through time, not to fly blind. So all of this is about how do we reactivate these higher faculties. First, what I've told you is these are not otherworldly beings. I hope that that's also really clear in the recorded materials. These are your own aspects of self that are coming from, they're moving at a different rate. Moving at a different rate through time, but it's still you. You're taking direction from yourself. coming from, let's say, higher dimensional perspective. And also, this is your attention, these lines that emit from the center of your forehead, and it's like an elephant's trunk. And whatever you focus your attention on, it is like a finger or a tendril that you're touching on, and you're making a bridge between yourself and that thing. So whatever you focus your attention on in terms of time, you're making a bridge between your moment now and that moment in the future. And this is literally how it is possible to align yourself with certain events in the future. And this loving aspect of self, that is the violet chakra up here, says, hey, I don't want you to die. I have a vested interest in keeping this whole apparatus alive. So I'm going to give you good guidance to keep you on the road that you're actually supposed to be on. Liz says, looks like indigo chakra revolves around the skull, 2 or 4 dimples. Very, very perceptive. You got it. It absolutely revolves around. So let me erase my scribble so you can see this drawing a little bit better. So I have in this drawing 2 wheels. Like here's one tire, here's another tire, but there's actually another one that goes in front of your face, and then there's another one that is behind the skull. And they whirl around in this direction. Like I just made that arrow, I'll make a big scribble, whirl around and around and around and around and around. And that is part of the whirling motion of time. And seeing and creating that whirling motion is part of our perception and reality creation. And they also spin around, you know, like dinner plates, you know, they spin around laterally as they're going. And they have an interplay and an interrelationship with that violet chakra. If I change my pen color here, with that violet chakra that is also similar to spinning around and around and around like dinner plates, and is also going end over end in this direction. Oh, my pen doesn't always work. Forgive me. In this direction, end over end, kind of like a baton, you know, kind of going end over end through space. So you can understand that there's this, like with music, I'll play a little bit of music. Like we got violet chakra doing this, and we got blue chakra doing this. And we've got an interplay between these 2 aspects of self, and they're not supposed to fight. It's not supposed to be like, oh, my violet chakra is telling me this, but I don't want to listen. But it's not supposed to be like that. Like, do your lungs fight with your heart? No, they don't. They all work together. So that's the whole idea. These are aspects of anatomy, just like your heart and lungs. So your heart pumps the blood and your lungs breathe in the oxygen, and they do it in concert with one another, and they don't fight, and they, you know, harmoniously make the entire aspect of self work. So the danger has been with humanity, basically for the past 2,000 years, raising its energy up to this level of the forehead. But if it happens, you know, like you're climbing up a ladder, right? And you got to this level on the ladder, but you haven't yet gotten up to violet up here. That's when people do that megalomania thing where they say, I am Jesus. I should go back to my face. Wait for this one, I should say. They do the megalomania thing. They say, I am Jesus. And or they say, I am Christ. And so here, now we'll be really accurate about this and not merely just funny. So when people have inner visions, and I got to talk about what does inner vision feel like? When people have an inner vision that they see themselves as Christ, that I'm interpreting as is an implant, like a non-physical software program. I'm not a transhumanist, but just using the idea of a thought structure that is running external to humanity, that when you raise your energy up to these levels and you're very vulnerable, you're like a little kid, and you've never read anything before, and someone gives you a book, it's like, here's a book, read it, and you read the book and it says, I'm Jesus, yes, and they jump to all sorts of conclusions. So first of all, here's what I have to say. That Christ consciousness is very, very real, and it's that experience, that mosaic of consciousness when each one of us plugs into that higher dimension, and that there's such a huge gap between the experience of, you know, activating one's inner vision and being part of real Christ consciousness and the teachings of the, you know, mythological story of a person named Jesus who was horribly crucified. Like I can't reconcile. They're like teeth of the gears that don't fit together. Like I cannot reconcile the difference of quality of experience between these 2 things. Because yes, I can't even find the words. Like, how do I even describe this? So yes, one of the dimples of like the warbling of the glass on the human filter is the idea of the necessity of suffering. So there's this story, God, like this is what doesn't make sense to me, like that, because it's this bloodthirsty God that requires, you know, either animal sacrifice or some form of human sacrifice or baby foreskin sacrifice. Like to me, that's not God. So this is, I understand that I'm speaking through that filter, again, not attempting to alienate or insult anyone in this, but this is highly distorted and I have to call it out. It's like, if I'm in a family, in the human family, and I see this unhealthy dynamic, I'm like, that's an unhealthy dynamic. That's not the way you're supposed to do it. I have to call it out. And I know I'm a galactic visitor, but it's like I actually know what I'm talking about, because guess what? I actually, and I'm looking at when I look to the side, I'm looking at my paintings on the screen over here. I actually see with my inner vision. So, you know, when I show my paintings, it's kind of like a little calling card. You know what it's like? It's like some guy that does a lot of bicycling, or some Olympic athlete, and they've got like really big calves. And it's like, their muscles show what they do with their time, and that they can really, whatever, bicycle, you know, many, many miles, or that they can, there's the same crucifixion implant. You totally understand. So yes, my muscles are evident in the paintings that I paint. And this story about the crucifixion, it is a software program that is running that makes, it's the death cult, that makes you, instead of wanting to live forever and go up that central core timeline, instead of the story of your great hero is a person who never hit the membrane of death, who went up the central core timeline and found their true self and exited the wormhole. No, the story of the great hero of humanity is someone who hit the membrane of death, and then you're supposed to hit the membrane of death too, and then you're supposed to go someplace great. To me, not only is that illogical, but I think that's a con job. I think that's a artificial way of like luring you into death to make it appear to be something that is righteous, and that you're a righteous person, you'll die and you'll go to heaven. And I don't think that that is what is true heaven. I think it is like another form of a construct, like a place that you, like a dream that you might think that you're in a place, but it's not real heaven, because real heaven is this expansive freedom that happens when you really learn how to navigate the time field in abstraction. I'm getting water to drink. This makes me very thirsty to talk. So the story of Jesus and the Christian religion and all of that is part of this control mechanism. It's part of this death cult stuff, and it's part of the sneering on the lens. And so people get up to this level of self-development. Some people call it opening their third eye. To me, it is akin to activating something, like turning on a light bulb. Like, oh, that's dark, nothing's going on there. All of a sudden I turn on my light bulb and I have turned something on. Now it is evident, now you can see. So to me, that is the definition of what happens when this energy center gets activated. Okay, I'll get into Aurora. How does that energy center get activated? It gets activated by sending energy to it. It's like saying, how does this light bulb, a bug just fell out of it, sorry. How does this light bulb over here, more bugs just fell out of it, gross, get activated? And the answer is you put electricity through it, you put energy through it. So for a very long time in humanity, this aspect of inner anatomy has been blocked off, like the switch is off. There's not energy going through it. And then some people, through artificial practices, turn on the light switch, they put energy through it. Sometimes it's through a psychedelic experience. Now, like, I'm not judgmental about people being able to do whatever they want with their inner biochemistry, but I have to say, huge caution flags on taking any kind of molecule, like a hallucinogenic molecule that puts energy on in the light bulb, because it doesn't necessarily come with that inner guidance system from the above, the great librarian that will make sure that you read age-appropriate material and that you read things in order. That's what that great librarian is supposed to do. The great librarian is supposed to be like, you need to read this, and then you need to read this, and then you need to read this, and then you have an accurate view of the cosmos. And I feel concerned, because from the people that I've interacted with who take a lot of psychedelics or hallucinogens, it sounds like they are just seeing all sorts of crazy random stuff. So what does the experience of seeing with inner vision feel like? Age inappropriate material, that's what Gala is agreeing with. What does the experience of seeing with inner vision feel like? So for me, if I'm not connected to this higher dimensional librarian guide, it looks like, instead of saying what it doesn't look like, blah, blah, what I should say is first, the experience of insight is perceiving everything all at once. I'm sorry, I have a bug flying around in my head. When I was doing my preparation for this presentation today, sitting outside, I was saying, okay, what am I going to say? How can I describe this? So if I use this shape as an example, because this is how I learned about this shape. First of all, I did meditation. So I don't perceive any of my stuff because I took a molecule. That's what I'm trying to say, guys. The way that I activated my inner vision, how I turned on my light bulb, was through meditation and mindfulness. I earned the calf muscles. I got the energy in my car to be able to make it go. So huge yellow caution flags on anyone who artificially awakens or turns on their inner higher faculties by using breathing techniques, or a molecule, or technological augmentation like some kind of a microchip, or something like a specific exercise like a specific breathing exercise, or self-asphyxiation, or any of those things. People do crazy SHIT, pardon my French. Like, people literally do all sorts of things. Like, I mean, not that I'm an expert at this, but I understand, like, there are some, even sometimes it is even justified by being tribal or indigenous. Like, I actually am not an advocate for practices where, you know, you're hung from your pectoral muscles in order to achieve an inner vision, or you're like put under some incredible level of physical duress in order to send energy to this higher dimensional aspect of yourself. That's not what it's supposed to be like. I do not have to, you know, whatever, hang from pectoral muscles in order to see my visions and do my work. What I have to do, and what I encourage everyone to do, is save mental energy in my energetic gas tank. And the way that you do this is through meditation and mindfulness. So what I said in that little whiteboard earlier, and what I referred to from the class last week, is when we make the love tone, where's the key? Love tone. I'm making the love tone. I'm moving through time at one moment per moment through time. And what you do when you move through time at the right moment, you know, you're jumping from train car to train car, jumping from box to box, and there's no friction. If you're busy thinking, just from now on, think verbalized thoughts equal friction. The less or fewer verbalized thoughts you can have in your mind throughout your entire daily waking existence means that you have less friction. It takes less energy for you to do your jumping through time. So you jump through time and you're not always thinking, and that means that you have more gas or more money. It's like if you're paid $100 a week, but you're spending 99 of your dollars on stupid thoughts. No offense to anyone. I'm not condescending to anyone, but it's this whole idea of, like, most thinking, it's like, I have to go buy a coffee. I have to go get coffee creamer. I have to go do my laundry because my shirt isn't clean. Oh, now I have to fix my tire. My tire is slightly flat. Like, it's everything like that. So just mundane task, chore-oriented thoughts, taskful thinking. And then also sometimes it's, oh, that thing that I'm looking at right now, that flat tire reminds me of a flat tire that happened 5 years ago, and I feel bad about blah, blah, blah. Like, then it's an opportunity to feel bad, thinking about something from the past, or perhaps anxiety. Like, that flat tire reminds me of, oh no, what's in my bank account and what's going to happen next week? But am I going to get paid this? Am I going to get paid this? Do I have money for a new tire? Like, that all is spending mental energy. That's spending, most people, most untrained minds, spend 99 of their $100 per week allowance on just frittering it away, not only on nonsense thoughts, but sometimes on things that you don't actually even want, like thoughts about, you know, death or suicide or cancer or any other illness, your dog getting fleas, whatever it is. You don't actually want to spend your mental energy thinking about that stuff, but you do. We do. It is part of the experience up until this point, because humanity has not been in control of its mind. That's why I call it a hacked operating system. It's not by accident. That operating system got installed in childhood or early, you know, infancy and early childhood for most people, and it's been running ever since, and it's not under your control. So this is big because it means that you are building the muscles to take it under your control, and this is through meditation and mindfulness. So lesson 4 of level 1 is what I'm doing right now. Lesson 5 is about meditation and mindfulness. It's actually guided meditation. So I'm not going to do a guided meditation on the class, because everybody, like, you got to feel your own time. It might not be the right time for you to meditate. And also there are all sorts of different ways to meditate. So Aurora, how do we cut down on mental friction? There are all of these different schools of meditation. And that's why also I don't have to be an expert at that. There are many other experts that you can consult with if you want to. There are a million different ways. It's like saying, if you want to build muscle mass, you can do it in a million different ways. You can do push-ups, you can, you know, lift weights, you can play with a medicine ball. I'm just drinking water. You can do 10 million different types of exercise that all end up with actually building muscles. So hold on. The key thing, the key aspect of this inner muscle building is that you find a way to not merely disassociate from thoughts and be like, oh, look, there's a thought going by, and it's kind of, you know, just not bugging me, but it's still there, but to actually begin ending those thoughts from even arising. And that's like saying, if I had a little, like, you know, like a bell, like if I ding a bell, like hit the bell, ding, and then it's like, I don't like that sound, so I'm going to dampen it. I'm going to stop that bell from ringing. That is how I see thoughts in the experience of having a neurology. It's like, ding, there's a thought, ding, there's a thought, ding, there's a thought. Let's have no more dings. That's the idea. And then you're not constantly fighting against, like, my car is trying to go in this direction, but something is trying to pull it over here. I got this crazy fly in here. That is what has been going on with humanity for all of recorded human history. And this is why people have illness, and this is why people have disease. It's not because you want to have it at all. It's because something else has been in control of your mind. And this is also, we are on the precipice of, or beginning all to experience, the level of reality where we're creating reality directly with our minds. So if you're not in control of your mind, something else is holding the steering wheel of your mind. And if it's creating these thought structures that you don't want, then that's like driving into a brick wall. And it's not appropriate for something else to be controlling your mind while you're driving through time. You get to control your own trajectory, and then you take full responsibility for it. You're like, I thought these thoughts, I went down that path, I made this happen. And that's very different than our present level of experience. So figure out the ways that you can reduce inner friction. For some people, it's sitting quietly. Like, you know, they sit with their legs crossed, they do their thing, they, you know, practice breathing techniques. For some people, it's the opposite. Some people need lots of cardio. Some people get their best levels of meditation if they do like long distance running or lots and lots of cycling. Or I do very well when I go for long dog walks with my little dog Cheeky. That, you know, if we're, especially for some place where I don't have to be mindful of like traffic or, you know, anything dangerous, if I can just kind of walk along with her. And I find at a certain point, like, I'm not actually having to think. I'm in what I describe as my blissful mind. And my blissful mind is the true mind of humanity, not the hacked human operating system. Let me also make a distinction. It is not the bliss of a lobotomized idiot. It is not, you know, a stupid mind. It's quite the opposite. It is a very, very sophisticated, nonverbal mind. It is the mind of pure insight. That's what we're trying to get. I'm trying to get across over here. So what is the experience? So first of all, how do you get gas in your car? You get gas in your car by quieting the implanted verbal mind in whatever way that works. And I do not find it effective to have to take a substance to quiet that mind, although many people do. Like some people people take all sorts of different shaped molecules to quiet their mind. However, at a certain point, like that is not effective. And so you got to find a way to do it. So for some people, it's exercise. For some people, it's mantra, which is just repetitive verbalization. You can quiet your mind just by saying the word ambulance over and over. And at a certain point, it becomes an abstraction and you're just saying it over and over and over or whatever. There's different little tricks and things like that. But the point, some people, washing the dishes. Let me just put it this way. If your practice of mindfulness includes washing the dishes, please come visit my house and practice mindfulness, because that would be just really wonderful. And then it would be like, oh, like, look, and you cleaned up my whole kitchen. But yeah, it could be anything. Usually it's a repetitive task. Sometimes, I'm just putting down my little thing, sometimes it can be playing music too. I find if it's a song that I already know and that I feel very comfortable with, and I don't really have to think about where my fingers are going on the piano, I'm just like, oh, I'm totally in the groove. I'm totally doing it. And also a lack of self-consciousness. Like, you know, if you're on stage, you know, in a performance, then it might be a little bit more difficult to achieve that level of just, you know, completely being at one with the environment. But that's what it is, that you are embedded within time. You're not slower than time or faster than time. You're moving along at exactly the right rate. That is the basic. It's like saying, Aurora, if I want to buy something in the capitalistic economy, how do I buy something? And the answer is you have to have money in your bank account. How do I get money? The answer is you get a job. You get a source of money. So each one of us, we have a job. And the job is, or source of income. The job, when you're human, your source of income is being connected to the source of life force energy and consciousness. That's where we get our energy from. Like, the vampires that live on the interstices, the horrible turds who refuse to flush, they're monsters. They don't have their own source of energy. So they're like, we want your energy. And that's why we are so attractive to them, because we have light. We have light because we're connected to the stellar network. Okay, so where do you get your money from? How do you get paid? How do you get income? You get income from the stellar network. The chattering, verbalized friction mind is what prevents us from getting that nutrition. Oh, I should have mentioned sun gazing. I get lots of money, lots of inner cash by sun gazing. So I have a whole teaching that's all about how to do that, but that is an excellent source of income. And I don't consider that to be an artificial augmentation. That's the word I'm going for. Don't get fake boobs up here. This is what I'm talking about. Go for only natural, not artificially augmented. Because now, just as a cautionary tale, yes, there's a lot of people that are on this planet and elsewhere. And so there are some non-physical beings that are in existence right now, like those occupiers, the turds, occupiers of the interstices, who use synthetic telepathy in order to augment their natural tendencies. It's fake boobs. It's not real. It's not their real assets. It's not who they really are. They haven't actually earned those muscles by doing lots of bicycling or something like that. Like they just, whatever, got a fake exoskeleton that can make them move and make them appear stronger than they actually are. So there are some beings that are like, ghostly, supernatural beings that are that way. There are some embodied humans that are that way. Again, this is a little bit far afield because this is level 1, but cautionary tale, because once you start to awaken your higher faculties, if someone or something talks to you, don't simply presume like, oh, you're an expert ascended master. Let me, kiss your cosmic butt and listen to everything you say. No, no, no. Don't kiss anybody's cosmic butt, because there's a lot of imposters up there that, as I said, use technological augmentation. And there's a lot of embodied humans that use synthetic telepathy. I call it microchips, but it's way more advanced than mere microchips. There are artificial neurons, a neural lace. There's different levels of augmentation. Some of them are molecular in the terms of taking a substance like DMT or ayahuasca or something else that amplifies the natural tendencies of the pineal gland. There are things like a headband. Yes, there's a magical headband that's been invented that is actually exotic technology that is now being applied on Earth, that is only available to special fancy people that will pay $1 million or more for it. And they put it on and it's fake boobs. It's a padded bra. That's what it is. It's not actually having an implant yet. It just makes it appear as if you are more voluptuous than you really are. And then if they like it enough, then they can go full implant, which is, being technologically augmented, which is not as crude as actually, having your brain cut open. It's not like that. It's more sophisticated technology, like nanotechnology, that intertwines itself with the natural neurology. And I don't advocate for any of that. Like, I think you can tell, not only in terms of physical beauty, but also in terms of this is higher dimensional beauty. Like in higher dimension, that's not very beautiful to be. It's like saying that you're such a bad musician that you can't play the keyboard unless you've got one of those keyboard that lights up so you know what note to play. Like, it's like you need technological augmentation, like you're not really that good. That's what I'm trying to say. And the people that pay for it and the people that participate on those levels, they are not only irresponsible. I'm just drinking more water here. They're not only irresponsible, but they're harmful to the rest of the music. Oh yeah, and a lot of these people, just shifting around here, a lot of these people are in secret societies or, the worst values. A lot of these people embody the worst values of humanity. They're not worthy, is what I'm trying to say. It's not like we have the best people in terms of their lovingness, their caringness, their compassion, their artistic talents, and everything like that. Those are not the people getting the augmentation. No, those are the people that are much more likely to do the work and earn it. That's the whole point of all of these words that I'm spewing out here. You're supposed to earn it. You're supposed to earn your higher faculties. Like, you earn the capacity to finish a marathon through hard work and through willpower. And in order to raise your energy up to these inner levels of perception, you're supposed to earn it. It's not supposed to be something that's just given to you, like turn on your light switch and now you can see. So yes, secret societies also have controlled people by either blinding them up here, saying, oh, you've got the natural tendency, but we're not going to allow you to actually utilize it. And also artificially augmenting people who don't have the natural tendency, saying like, yeah, you're a dud. You're never going to do it on your own. So here, like, take this injection and now you can do it, apparently have muscular calves like that real bicyclist over there, but he didn't really earn his muscles. That's what is going on in a very large part on this planet right now. So that's the levels of distortion that we are facing when we begin to raise our energy to here. It's like saying you got your library card and you found out when you went to the library, the books are all disarranged on the shelves. No one is using the Dewey Decimal System, and some books have even been vandalized with pages ripped out and maybe even scotch taped back together in a way that's not even the way it's supposed to make sense. That is the equivalent of what is going on right now. I've said it many, many times. We're not in a schoolhouse. We are in a fun house that is not actually very fun for its participants. It is a distorted realm with, like fun house mirrors. Some are concave, some are convex. And what you send out doesn't necessarily come back to you whether you sent it out or at all. This is what I'm talking about. So also, okay, blah, blah, blah. And I know I have just a few more minutes on this level recording. What is the experience of actually seeing when you activate your higher faculties? So it is an instant insight. This is literally called insight or inner vision. It is not a narrated or linear presentation. So I'm giving a linear presentation. Here's the first thing I said, here's the second thing I said, here's the third thing I said, and blah, blah, blah for a whole hour. The experience of seeing something with inner vision in the higher dimensional realm, higher perception, is seeing all at once. It's like seeing, here's this shape. And when you see this shape, it is self-explanatory. You don't need a verbalized narrator flapping its moving mouth parts and saying, this is a vortex, this is a sphere, this is the singularity. Nothing like that. So that's a really big one, because I think in this world of new age spirituality or spiritual seekers, or however I can use a word to describe this world, but you know what I'm talking about. There's lots of channelers, there's lots of bloggers, there's lots of people writing lots and lots of words on keyboards that are saying like, this is what my inner higher perception is saying to me. However, the inner higher perception is insight, and it speaks instantaneously. So here's the difference. Like when I have insight through the anthropomorphic filter, when I'm looking through this level of human lens, and I have insight, I have a flash of understanding that happens all at once. And it might be in terms of looking at human cultural patterns or personal interactions. Like I might look using my human lens, put down things so I can gesture better, look through my higher dimensional telescope, but through my human lens. And I might do that in order to look at like human society. Like I've done it a lot in terms of looking at government and politics and what's going on in current events so I can understand it better. Or it might be in terms of looking at interpersonal relationships. Like this guy said this and this person said this and here's what happened. When I look through my lens and use my higher faculties, I understand it as a flash. It's insight. I say, oh, I understand why that country attacked that country because of this stuff that was going on. Not a narrator does not come to me and say, this country, Napoleon invaded Russia because of blah, blah, blah. I just get an insight and a flash. Oh, this happened because of this. So it's bypassing words. I've said this so many different times, the flapping of my moving mouth parts and how inadequate this is, that language is a virus. We're using a hacked human operating system, and within that operating system, we then have an app or a sub-program that is running called language. And all of it is like created from the original, distorters of humanity and those who wish to eventually harvest humanity or control your minds on a higher dimensional level, for a very, very, very long time. So this is the whole, and when I say that, like, I'm not trying to make people be afraid or whatever, but that's the end game of the Christian religion. Like, oh, you'll eventually get, go up to heaven or something like that. That's the whole thing, because you're really, really juicy and really imaginative. And they're like, let's get those little sparks of juicy, imaginative and consciousness and get them to just circulate endlessly around on this hamster wheel so that can run our, mini-verse or something like that. Wait, drinking water. And I'm trying not to be too flippant. I get a little bit, lighthearted sometimes because it's a very dark topic. It's not very much fun to say, hey, consciousness might be subverted into a pocket realm and then used to power some, malevolent, larger architecture. That's not a very fun thing to have to say. However, that is what's going on. So sometimes, I try to present it in a lighthearted way. When I see on an anthropomorphic level, I see with insight. I see it right away. I don't have to have a narrator that uses the hacked human operating system and English language to tell me that guy doesn't like that guy. I have an insight. Or sometimes it's in the sense of understanding a person's life trajectory or even the origins of their illness. If I find out like, oh, like that guy over there is sick and he's got blah, blah disease and it's because of this thing in his life, I see it all at once. I don't necessarily have a narrator telling me about it. That is 180 degrees the opposite of what a lot of people, I think, are doing when they're doing these channeling and blogging things, where they literally are having a conversation, a linear back and forth, or a linear download where something says, first this, then this, then this. To me, that is not the experience of inner vision. To me, that is like a fantasy. And when I say fantasy, I mean an indulgence something that is made up, something that is cobbled together, not something that is perceived. And this is about direct perception. So now let me go to a different image on my screen share, and we'll talk about what is direct perception on an abstract level. Oh, wait, okay, stop. Let me go to a better picture first. Don't worry, guys, I'm totally organized. I just want to get a nice, giant abstraction. Okay, so here's a good example of it. Oh, hello, my dear, I see you've just tuned in. Hold on, now let me go to screen share. Good to see you, Christine. And she's always knitting something beautiful or crochet something beautiful. So this image that I've got over here, this is painting that I did. There we go, you can see it in the middle of the screen there. It's an abstraction. It is seeing purely from the higher dimensional viewpoint, violet chakra, and that's like the end result of being able to read, let's say, a paragraph in the language of, you know, pure vibration. And oh, let me just mute you, my dear. Let me go back to my screen so I can do this. Hold on, let me mute everyone. Sorry, technology, I'm squinting. Mute all, there we go. Here we go. This is an abstraction. It's not a picture of a person. It's not a picture of a face. The anthropomorphic form has one head and two arms and two legs, and this is not a picture of the anthropomorphic form. Right on, thank you, Sarah Jane. This is called Merkaba Chakra 2, and it's a combination of both the 4 vortices shape, that is our chakra shape, and also the hexagonal based pattern known as the star tetrahedron, and how these two aspects of energetic anatomy fit together. And the whole point is, you know, when I painted this painting, in order to paint it, I saw that. It's like if you see a face, but it's not a face, but it's like a higher dimensional face. And it's like, that's what it looks like. But then just like, I'll go back to my face. Just like if you go to art school and you want to draw a face, it's like, okay, where do I even begin? How do I even draw this face? What do I do? So in art school, what you do is you learn anatomy. And most of the artists learn by drawing a skull first. First you learn what is the structure in a face. How does a bone fit together? How does a bone fit together? And you also learn proportions. That is what I learned at the higher dimensional level. So my learning journey was first the basic shapes. So we've got a vortex, one of these little vortexes. How is it put together? Then many vortices fit together, and what is the shape that it makes? Then what happens if I put many of these shapes together, which is just like saying if I'm going to play a song, and the first part of the song is this, and then the next part of the song is this, and then what happens if I put this whole thing together? Then it makes a whole song. So that has been my journey, guided by the higher dimensional librarian that first taught me, hey, this is what a vortex is. So I meditated. I got gas in my car. I didn't take a molecule or artificial microchips injected into my brain or anything like that. And then when I had enough gas in my car or enough money in my energy bank, it's like if you want to buy a dress or whatever, you're like, oh, I didn't know that dress is $55. I better save up. And you're looking in your bank account, you're like, got 36, I don't have enough for it yet. Oh, I'm up to 47, I almost have, oh, do I have enough for the shipping? And you got enough for the dress, and then you can actually order it. That's what it is necessary to do in terms of insight. And that's what this accretion of light and personal development is all about. This is why it takes time. And then, so it takes time to accrete light, that means to gather together light. And so part of it is sun gazing, part of it is mindfulness and meditation, and another part of it is we refine light out of our food. So eating high quality food. Here, guys, here's my wonderful green cannabis juice, and it's also mixed with like some other wonderful fruit juices and stuff. But that's what I'm talking about. This is like liquid light. We eat light. When we eat wonderful, you know, unprocessed living foods, we're eating food that actually has consciousness in it. And if it takes consciousness to run your inner telescope, and P.S., don't forget, your inner telescope can also be an inner microscope. Like if this is like a big long tube or a finger or something, aperture, you can also turn it around to yourself. You could be like, what do skin cells do? I don't know. Let me use my inner microscope to look at skin and learn all about it. This is what direct perception is like. Wait, let me drink. So it's not learning from someone else. I never had a professor that said to me, Aurora, this is what the flying rainbow lasagna is, even though I know it's ironic because I'm a professor, I'm telling you what this is. But I don't want you guys to just take my word for it. That is why I do this class. What I want is for everyone to say, hey, wait, someone told me that this thing exists. They also told me I could reactivate my higher faculties and cultivate them and blah, blah, blah. And I want to see it for myself. That is what I want you to do. So yes, all of these paintings that I share and all of these sculptures that I do, it is not meant to be something that is like, oh, here's my personal world, I made this up. No, I'm showing you a real place, it's a real landscape, and I'm not the only person that is meant to go there and visit, and I encourage everyone to activate their higher faculties and actually see what that place is. And my paintings and sculptures will be confirmation. You'll be like, that's that place that Aurora painted. And it's just like if you look at something in the guidebook and like, you know, like a, whatever, like a famous building in Thailand, and you're like, I'm reading about this place and I'm going to go there one day. And then one day you go there and you're like, look, I read about that in the guidebook. I know that I'm, you know, at blah, blah, blah square. That's why I do these. And also that each person is meant to have their own, you know, direct perception. And that this is also like being able to fly your own plane or drive your own car. I'm not supposed to drive anybody else's car. Each person needs to drive their own vehicle or ride their own horse. And you need to feel what is right for your own particular path. So what is it like to perceive on an abstract level? I'm very visually oriented. So I also liken this to development in early infancy, not in any form of condescension, but just in the sense that I don't know if anybody can remember this about their own journey, but people have different rates of development. Some babies walk sooner than others. Some babies are really good at learning how to like pick up little Cheerios with their hands and actually get them into their mouth. And some babies, like their food is all over and they don't know how to do it. Learning to control the higher faculties and to see in higher dimensional sense and control ourselves through time is very much like a little baby. We're learning about our faculties. We're learning about how to control our bodies and everything like that. So everybody develops at different rates and people have different talents that come out sooner. So some people are really great at walking. Some people, you know, would develop walking first. Some people develop speaking first. Some, whatever, little kids are really good at reading flashcards when they're, you know, very young. So this is the whole idea. For me, the visual sense was very strong. And that was as Aurora when I came into this body, because there were lots of other neurological disturbances. But the visual sense, like an understanding of just color, of just shapes, of just understanding what I look at in the world was very strong. And so my inner vision, when I see with my higher insight, to me, I interpret it through color and line and shape and form. And I tell this story all the time, because this interdimensional language also includes tone, musical tone. I came to musical tone years after I understood visual. So the basic gist of it was I did a lot of paintings and I was at an art show like very early on in my career, and someone came up to me and they said, you are painting harmonics. And I literally didn't know what that word meant. And I didn't say that because I'm like, you know, I'm like smooth. So I'm like, okay, I'm going to write that word down and then go home and look it up. And so I went home and I looked it up. And then even it still took many years for me to begin to understand and make those connections between what my eyes were seeing, what my ears were hearing. So I started to teach myself the piano. And the way I taught myself the piano was by associating moving my thing so I could play the piano properly, every note with the color of the rainbow. So that's C. I started off with C being red, orange, yellow, green, blue, indigo, violet. And then we go back to red again, and it keeps going over and over and over. And I actually even have I had a little like sticker sheet that I put on my keyboard so that it looked like a rainbow, so that I could kind of make that connection. So for me, in my infantile development of my higher senses, first the visual sense was very strong, and then later came the auditory sense and understanding that this is also music. For some people, it's the opposite. Some people understand and appreciate the nested harmonic sound waves and music and its connection to math and numbers first, and then understand color and line and form and visual proportion as harmonics second. And it doesn't matter. And it's not like one is better, one approach or one person, I'm just taking my time, is better than the other. This is what I'm trying to say. It's very beautiful. It's the way it's supposed to be. Everybody has their own, just like your unique thumbprint, your unique DNA pattern, your unique pattern of growth, the way that you develop as a person, and that's appropriate. So when each person, you get enough gas in your gas tank, you get your higher faculties, it's like getting them spinning. You get everything spinning, you get everything spinning, you get everything spinning, and then you're ready to book some time on the inner telescope. when I say book some time, it's just like any of these large arrays, like the large array, they call it the very large array. I think it's an Arecibo. Yeah, big fat telescope. And if you get that time on the telescope, you're not going to spend it like looking at something stupid. You want to spend it looking at something good, not frittering it away. Remember, we prevented ourselves from using mental energy and frittering it away so that we would have $57 in the bank so we could buy that dress of our dreams. And now we want to actually spend it on something good. So yeah, you don't just want to get up to those higher levels of insight and then think about something nonsensical or that is not actually salient in your life. So what I do in my connection to the higher librarian, I ask my inner guidance, I say, please give me the information that I need that is most salient to this moment in my journey now. Just like my GPS of a car, I don't have GPS in my car, but like, you know, like on a phone or whatever. If it's giving you directions, if it's telling you, hey, turn left, I need to know like that's turn left at this corner right now, right here. I don't need to know turn left in 5 years or 10 years or 10,000 years. I need to know what do I need to do right now for best health and safety. Like, you know, how to stay alive. That's what this higher faculty is supposed to guide us into, how to stay alive. And that is why I find it, as a definition, by definition, the opposite of what Christian religion is teaching, which is not how to stay alive, which is basically your greatest hero was killed and you get to die just like your greatest hero. Like, no. Like, I want to teach everyone, stay alive. And again, I am not casting aspersions upon a religion, because I think that some aspects of the religion are very beautiful and they're about caring for other people and wanting to be the best version of you. So you can tell, like, okay, I had my experience of when I walked into this body and I had the experience of direct Christ consciousness. And then when I came here, I thought like, oh, like this is what churches are all about. And then I got very disillusioned after I actually participated at some of the churches and I looked into the holy books and everything. And then I said, okay, that not as advertised. Like when you return a dress, you're like, not as advertised. Okay, let's look for something different. So yeah, no offense to anyone, because I think that a lot of very, very good, well-intentioned people associate with or gather, you know, under the auspices of a Christian church, but that I do not promote those teachings at all. And when people hear like, what, you died and you came back and you wear a cross now and everything, they think that I'm a born again Christian. I'm like, nope, not a born again Christian. I'm not a biblical literalist. And also, like, I'm not here as an outsider to try to make fun of anyone on earth or their viewpoint or anything like that. It's not about that, but I'm trying to create a big clarification or a big distinction, because humanity's got a smear on the lens. I just got to drink a little bit more water. And I'm almost done with this level of recording. I get to your question. Humanity has a big smear on the lens, and I do feel that I have very good perspective, because I am a cultural outsider, to be able to say like, hey, like I got here and this stuff doesn't make sense. Like, let's re-examine this because I think it's a glitch, or like mal program, something in the program that like you need some patch code. That's not how it's supposed to be running. So wait. Okay, to this question. Salu says, are there humans that exist physically on planet Earth that have the same or similar demonic energy consciousness as the occupiers of the interstices? The answer is yes. So there are levels of partnership between the, like, let's say roughly divided into two groups, the non-physical beings that exist interdimensionally, who don't have beings, they don't have bodies, they don't want bodies, and those beings that do have bodies, and they have bodies, and they're willing to be in a type of partnership with the guys that don't have bodies, and they'll say, well, hey, you can use my vocal cords, but you got to give me this. You can use my body, you know, like, yeah, I'll be an axe murderer for you. I'll be a psychopathic murderer. I will stab people for you, but you've got to give me this. So that's that whole deal. That's that whole idea. Sometimes they're like, I'll do blah, blah, blah for you, but you must give me notoriety and fame, right? This is the old story, the Faustian bargain, a person who wants to be famous or wants to be appreciated, so they make a deal with the devil. This is like, you know, the blues guy at the crossroads, or the red shoes, or so many people in Hollywood, like whatever. There's just lots and lots of cautionary tales out there. So yeah, there's a lot, and I'm looking at the chat. There's a lot of people who have made, or let's say there are a lot of embodied humans who have made that agreement. So that basically is like saying this: the demonic turds cut off humanity from humanity's own higher consciousness, from your own higher guidance. from your capacity to see through time and read books at the interdimensional library and learn and grow as a person. And then they set themselves up as gods. And even though sometimes it is clear that they are demonic, but they're like, we will now come in through your hacked human operating system and control you and tell you what to do. And some people are like, yes, I will let you do that as long as you reward me. Like, they just want to eat steak in the Matrix. You know what I'm talking about? They're like, I know that this is wrong. I know that I should fight against this. I know that I'm very weak, but I just want to have a cushy gig. That's what I call them. They're like traitors to humanity. That's no one. They literally, oh, look who it is, everyone. Oh my goodness. Perfect timing. She always shows up at the end of level 1. She has like a little hour-long dog nap. Just telling me it's time to wrap things up and move on to level 2. It's Cheeky. And you know something, when Cheeky's in, it's really good. When she's in the thumbnail of the video and the upload, I totally get more views. So it's really good. Not that I have advertising or anything on my videos, but more people get lasagnified because they're like, come on, watch the video with the cute dog. So, okay, I'm pretty much at the end of level 1. So this is all about when we reactivate our higher faculties, we form a continuity. We become a continuum between our embodied physical selves and our intangible, non-embodied aspects of self. And those non-embodied aspects of self are totally different than those horrible, evil beings that are disembodied beings that, you know, live on the interstices. Those beings, like, they don't deserve to be active in the time field. I'm trying to get it so you can see Cheeky and see me at the same time. They don't deserve to be active in the time field. That's why they don't have bodies. Only people who deserve to be in the band are supposed to be here in the band. And those beings that don't have bodies, they can't be in the band. They don't have a guitar. But they're like, I don't have a guitar, but I want to play your guitar through you. So they do all sorts of crazy crap in order to take over people's bodies. And, you know, sometimes it's not, if they don't take over your bodies, like while you're doing the dishes, while you're doing the laundry, they ain't helping out in that. They're only wanting to be there for, you know, moments on the stage or, you know, divine, not even divine, like, let's say, you know, moments of intense euphoria or pleasure or eating chocolate cake. Like, they're not actually there for you. They're there for their own personal gratification and exploitation of you as a physical embodied being. And that's a horrible level of exploitation, and no one should be experiencing that. And unfortunately, just like if you've been in an abusive family and you find an abusive partner, it's like, yeah, you're used to being abused. A lot of people around here are used to being exploited. So they think like, oh, that's what it is. And the most disgusting thing is when they actually think that that's a God or a divine being or a Christ that is possessing them. No, Christ is not possessing you, and that's not a possession type of level of relationship or partnership. You don't get possessed by Christ. You are like a node on the Christ network. You are part of Christ consciousness. Cheeky is part of Christ consciousness. Microbes are part of Christ consciousness. Redwood trees are part of Christ consciousness. All of these forms of consciousness, blue whales, the planet, the galaxy, these are all part of Christ consciousness. So even the idea like that there's one guy on Earth 2,000 years ago and that they're naming it after him, like, oh my goodness, there's so many different things. I just, sometimes I just can't even. So this is a question from Jen. She says, what if it is a young person that has these demons? Oh, and they don't know it or won't realize. Is that from vaccines? I'm going to answer that. I know there's also another question above it. Really, really good insight, like pure understanding on the vaccines issue. So sometimes I see these very like heartbreaking videos of young people that are vaccine damaged, and sometimes they're just self-harming, like, you know, punching themselves in the head, and or, you know, in other ways like violencing their own body. And I see it as the vaccines and injections have injected a malevolent consciousness into their own body. So that so first of all, the creation of vaccines is a form of ritual involving, you know, aborted fetal cells. And that's its own ritual. Like, you're killing a baby, taking its life force that could have lived, you know, 50 years if it had been properly gestated, and instead torturing it, you know, tearing its limbs apart and then taking its kidney cells or whatever, got a bug in here, and culturing those kidney cells to grow in a petri dish so that you can grow whatever, like, you know, a pertussis vaccine or something like that. I'm just, you know, I'm making random examples here, but you understand what I'm talking about. Because there's a whole there. I don't know exactly which are the cell lines, but there's different cell lines that come from different parts of the bodies, from different, aborted fetuses. And basically, what they're doing is taking the consciousness of that aborted fetus, torturing it, and then magnifying that torture times 10 million, so that it's in 10 million little vials, and then injecting that torture, that torment, into the bodies of other healthy children, who then get to be tormented themselves. So it's like exponentially expanded, horrible ritual of torment. It's not just the children that are being tormented by, an implanted demon, but then it also becomes their entire family. Because for many families that have a vaccine injured or vaccine damaged child, the idea of normal life is just down the tubes. Like, they're busy caring for their child so that it's not going to punch itself in the face all the time. Like, it's not like going to the beach and having fun barbecue trips and things like that. It's a very low quality of existence for the entire family, unfortunately. So yes, it is a very efficient way of creating misery and then harvesting misery. But so that's what, yes, very good insight on vaccines and their connection to satanic dark magic, satanic technology, consciousness harvesting, and implantation of foreign genetic bodies into your own genetic body. Now, this question about, from Salu, she was saying, did those humans with the similar demonic traits not leave source on the bridge of love? And if so, does that mean they ought to be in the Bose-Einstein state too? Yes, those beings should go to a state of entropy. If anybody is a demonic portal, they're like a physical, embodied, multicellular being. And yet they say, yes, I have a guitar and I want something evil to play my guitar. They don't belong in the time field. Like, they don't have the levels of integrity that are necessary to be in the band. They're not playing good music. So they should literally become frozen in time, so they are no longer moving through time. And this is actually advanced level stuff, because here, I'm presenting just the basics. And just like I say, well, here's a perfect anatomy, but then we understand that there are astigmatisms in the eye, in the cosmic eye. It's not actually seeing clearly. It must be recognized that in the exact same way, I say, basically, we're in a world where not everybody who is in existence is supposed to be in existence. Many beings have been brought into existence through this dark magic or artificial technology. And part of it, you could think of it as cloning or synthetic replicants, but part of it you could think of as like in vitro fertilization and the artificial technological fertilization of eggs, and or whatever, genetically modifying humans. That basically, if a being was not conceived from natural, procreative sex, and that they're not actually supposed to be in the time field, it's like this. English bulldogs. If English bulldogs, the way that they've been bred at this point, they can't actually give birth naturally. They don't have a pelvis that's shaped correctly, so they can only be in the time field if humans help them with surgical birth. And there are some humans that could not ever be in the time field unless they were altered or spliced together in an artificial way. Just like there are tomatoes that have fish genes spliced into them. No tomato ever had sex with a fish to make that tomato offspring. That is an aberration. And I'm sorry that I'm using the word aberration to describe beings that are like anthropomorphic, human-shaped beings. They're like tomatoes with the fish gene. They're not supposed to be in existence. Please don't ever take my words out of context and say, now let's go on a crusade with machine guns and kill everybody who's not supposed to be in existence. Like, that's not what I'm saying. Please don't get machine guns. But do understand that there are beings that are in existence, like we're in a very distorted time field, that aren't even supposed to be here. A lot of them have been artificially created. And then they might have been artificially conceived and then implanted in an actual womb, so an actual woman gave birth to them, or they might have been spliced together, created completely under artificial circumstances. Like, the technology to do that does exist, and it is being employed on Earth right now, and it's a mirror to what happened at the fall of ancient Atlantis, or the antediluvian sophisticated worldwide culture, where similar things were happening. And they didn't necessarily say, hey, we're going to, sprinkle throughout your culture a bunch of fake ass people, and we're going to screw things up for that. They didn't say that back then, and they didn't say that now, but it's going on now. But now we get to have the corrective experience. So you don't have to say, oh no, we're just going to have another cataclysm and then, flush the toilet again and then rebuild again. That's not what's going to happen. However, we face similar levels of duress, because it's just like if you got, attacked or something like that at one point in your life, and then you, like the Karate Kid, got attacked and bullied at one point in his life, then he learned martial arts, then when he got attacked again, he was able to fight back. That is the story of humanity. Humanity was horribly raped and attacked. And now we have gone through the Mr. Miyagi training school of martial arts. And now when the bully comes along, instead of being able to be an easy target, we're able to fight back. And so that is what is happening right now in terms of consciousness. Lots and lots of people can perceive who is not supposed to be here. And like, no offense, but there are a lot of people in Hollywood and in the media and in music, and they've either been artificially created or they're regular people who have been artificially elevated to the point of complete distortion. Like, they're not themselves anymore. They might be a physical container, but they're not, there's nobody home in that container. Like, that's the best way I can say it. And I hope that I'm using my words like impeccably to describe this, because I'm not trying to, I never want to disempower anyone by saying like, oh no, the world is overrun by clones and that's what, blah, blah, blah. But they, something, there are artificial people in the world and you need to be aware of this. And it's just like trying to think of the right words. It's quite an education. It's quite an education for all of us, being like, who am I interacting with? Because sometimes you don't know. And then you find out later, like, oh, like that person was like a science experiment. I was just talking to a science experiment, like not a real person. But anyway, Jen says in subsequent about the vaccines, could FRL work on vaccine injured if they understood the concept? Absolutely. Yes, that's a really wonderful application of the flying rainbow lasagna. To send that energy of tormented fetus and fetal cells to a sense of peacefulness, putting it where it's supposed to be, as opposed to circulating around through a person's DNA who is here in the time field. Like if you're dead, you're supposed to relax and be at peace and be in entropy. You're not supposed to be in a tormented semi-alive state where you live in the genes of people who are actually alive. So yes, that's an excellent use of flying rainbow lasagna. So the big takeaways to sum up, and then I'll get on to level 2. I'm actually a little bit over my time. Healthy seeing, let's call it healthy, clear seeing through this site is pure insight. It is just understanding the significance, not clothed in words. It is nonverbal. And if it is through the anthropomorphic filter, it doesn't have to be distorted, but it's an understanding on the human level. And when we get to the abstract level, what we're understanding is seeing the various possibilities in time, the different possibilities in the time field, and how we are connected to those abstract possibilities. And that's where we really start to, like when you begin to write music and you're like, oh, I can actually write music like dots on a staff. And then I can turn that into, like, you begin to understand how you can make shapes and lines and colors and then have it, or emanate energy in harmonic waves, and then have that be translated into an actual experience on your human level of either eating something or meeting a person or going to a place or having a new experience in your life. So you begin to become a virtuoso. So, and the way that you awaken those higher faculties for true inner vision is by doing the actual work of mindfulness and meditation. Then you don't need training wheels. You don't need a molecule. You don't need to smoke a something, inject a something, or implant a something. And I use myself as an example, like I'm all natural. Just me. I'm not using any microchips, and I don't, I use CBD medicine. I drink my cannabis juice. My cannabis juice. I'm sure Chiki wants some. Yes, but this is like, this is not psychoactive. It's not like whatever. I have nothing against people that take LSD or trip on mushrooms or whatever, but from interacting with people that have done that, and that's where they got their insight from, I started to understand that they weren't reading the books in the proper order, and they were getting a very distorted viewpoint of what was actually going on. So I do not actually advocate for that, even though I'm not judgmental against it. So okay, let me end level 1, move on to level 2, and thank you. Oh, wait, there's one more question. So Jen says, excellent, thank you. Send the DNA of the injured, tortured ones, yes, on their way. That is exactly what you do, because it's like energy out of place. All of this dark magic is based upon energy out of place. So something is supposed to be where it's supposed to be. Like your tooth is supposed to be where it's supposed to be. You're not supposed to have tooth cells in your heart. If you have that, that's a horrible, horrible disease. Like that's energy out of place. So those cultivated fetal cells that are what make the vaccine lines, their energy out of place. And that is what is causing all of this suffering, all of this stuff. And same thing with actual embodied humans who are not supposed to be alive. Like, let's say you took, I'm taking some cells from that guy over there, I'm going to splice them together with something from that guy over there, and we're going to make, like, you know, a Frankenstein's genetic monster. This happens in this time and place. Like, that person is energy out of place. Don't grab your machine gun and shoot them, you know, like Breakfast of Champions style. However, do recognize that that is what's going on in a large extent in our society right now, and that there are some very well-known people with notoriety that are, you know, cobbled together Frankenstein's monsters on the genetic level. Okay, on that note, and boss has just jumped off, freeing me to do things a little bit more easily. Let me move on to level 2. So let me just end this recording for right now.